Hearing on House Bill 4129. Who's on that one? Oh, yes, please. And then Representative Clem, you're on deck. Yes, go ahead.
Morning, Chair.
Are there other members who want to be heard this morning, other representatives or senators on this bill? Well, I have a big list, and I'm going to go right on through it after that. I hope you're signed up. Okay. Page 2. Great. Representative, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go
Morning,
ahead.
Chair, members of the committee. This is House Bill 4129 that proposes to increase tax rates on cigarettes and tobacco products, create a definition for vapor products to include electronic cigarettes and nicotine solution in the definition of tobacco products for purpose of tax, to direct revenue from the increased tax revenue to be distributed by the Oregon Health Authority, to provide for preventive services, non-traditional health assistance, and mental health services.
Yeah, Representative Bailey.
Mr. Chair, I simply note that Vijay here might need to know that Mazen usually makes a poor joke about tobacco when he these bills. So if you could just insert that.
So he needs to work on his sense of humor.
That's right.
I need to catch up with
We
Marvin.
need more poor jokes around.
And you certainly may consult.
It's big shoes.
You certainly may consult with him on that topic. I would encourage you to ignore Representative Bailey's comment.
Everybody else does.
I'm keeping up with Mazen, so I'll catch up on this.
Okay, on this as well. Very good. Representative Clem, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Brian Clem, State Representative from District 21, which is here in Salem. We're we're kind of in the middle of my district right now. It's kind of the middle of Salem generally. I wanted to come here and talk to you about one of my two bills for the session. We all got two. This is one of my two, House Bill 4129. And what this does is, hello, Senator.
Hello.
What this does is raise the cigarette tax by $1.50 a pack. And this would not even get us to Washington's levels, but it would get us pretty close. Obviously, this isn't the Health Policy Committee, which I serve on, and with Representative Conger. So I won't probably go into all the policy details I normally would, because you're the Revenue Committee, and you probably want to know about the mechanics and all that kind of stuff. But just since we didn't have a policy hearing, since this is the short session, and I think they just decided let's get it straight down here. I can tell you that tobacco and smoking is the leading cause of preventable death in the United States. And so if you can get yourselves out of the revenue mode for just a moment, think about that. This is the leading cause of people dying in our country. And I've got other studies that demonstrate the price of cigarettes is probably the most effective way to lead people to stop smoking. So take those two facts together, that through taxation, or if you can talk the cigarette companies into raising prices, I guess, on their own voluntarily, very high, you could save many, many, many lives in this state. Now, this bill was something that I worked with the CCOs to develop, and the funds, generally speaking, go to them. There's a mental health holdback of 15% for mental health-related treatments. Certainly, one of the problems we've had with the tax in the past is it being used for things other than tobacco prevention. The goal of some of these dedications, even though they're statutory, is to not have these funds be used for other things. I would say there's an argument that the tobacco related illnesses certainly cost the general fund money broadly. So even if you just raise the tax and let it go to the general fund, that's probably still a good idea, because cigarette smoking causes a drain on the general fund, certainly. But in this case, we're dedicating it actually to the healthcare instrument that this state has decided is our way to help make people healthier in the Oregon Health Plan population. At some point, CCOs may take on a broader role, but right now they're targeting a certain population for the delivery of healthcare in a coordinated fashion. That population tends to be a higher user of tobacco products, unfortunately. And so in this case, the funds would go to help the people who are probably most in need of getting treatment so they can quit. If nicotine weren't in there, I wouldn't even be here. If 3 of my 4 grandparents weren't I'd like to use the term murdered, but if they didn't die from tobacco smoking, one, my grandmother never even smoked in her life, and she still died from lung cancer. So if we could take the nicotine out and it was just a free choice versus people making a product designed to eventually hook and kill your own customers, I wouldn't be here. But we're not. That's the nature of cigarettes. And so I'm here in front of the Revenue Committee asking you to see if you can do something about the leading cause of death in this country.
Very good. Well, after the call for members, I got two more. Please.
Thank you so much, Chair Barnhart, members of the committee. For the record, Elizabeth Steiner Hayward, State Senator for District 17, Northwest Portland, Beaverton area, and also a family physician, former president of the Oregon Academy of Family Physicians, and very honored to sit here with Representative Clem, Representative Kenny Guyer, and others in support of this bill. I want to be crystal clear. I hope that eventually we have almost no revenue from this bill, which is one of the reasons why it's a little weird to have it sit in front of a revenue committee, but it's a tax, so it has to. Ultimately, I hope we don't have to depend on this money at all, and we shouldn't depend on it because it should, as Representative Clem said, decrease the number of people who smoke and certainly decrease the number of people who start smoking. Adolescents are particularly sensitive to the price point on cigarettes, and they're much less likely to start smoking if it's that much more expensive. And we know that if people don't start smoking until they're in their early or late mid-20s, they're much less likely to start at all. And if they do start, they're much less likely to become addicted. Let me be crystal clear. Nicotine is more addictive than cocaine. It's about equally addictive to heroin. Heroin and cocaine are illegal drugs, and yet nicotine-containing products are not. Nicotine's more addictive than alcohol. It's more addictive than marijuana. It's more addictive than a lot of other things that we consider illegal or dangerous. And yet it's more dangerous, as Representative Clem quite rightly pointed out, than any of those other things that I mentioned. It really is. It's very possible to use alcohol safely in limited quantities. Lots and lots. The vast majority of people who use alcohol do. The vast majority of people who use tobacco products do not use them in a way that they can really control without a significant amount of effort. Cigarette taxes should be viewed primarily as a public health intervention and not a revenue generating source. So I'm sorry to sit in front of the Revenue Committee and say that, but ultimately I hope that we'll see, as we've started to see in many other states that have raised their taxes, that revenue from cigarettes goes down, as it should. But dedicating some of this money to mental health is really important because right now we've seen substantial decreases in smoking incidents among generally healthy people. The place we have not seen a decrease, and in fact have seen an increase, is in people with severe persistent mental illness. And in general, people with chronic mental illness tend to smoke more than people without chronic mental illness or with mental illness that's well controlled. So if we dedicate money toward treating people with mental illness, toward tobacco prevention, then we will actually be putting this money to good use in the population most severely affected by this drug. I urge your support for this. I know that it's tough to pass taxes. I get that. I get how powerful the tobacco industry is. We're here to serve Oregonians. We're here to help Oregon be the healthiest state in the nation. And this is an amazing way that we can do this. So I urge your support for this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and colleagues. I'm really honored to join my colleagues on the House and Senate Healthcare Committees. As a lifelong advocate for public health with a master's in public health. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Alyssa Kenny Guyer, House District 46, parts of Southeast Northeast Portland. So this has been a lifelong passion of mine, and I just want to reiterate everything they've said about the need to pass a tax, not only to raise revenue. There will be, unfortunately, some people that still smoke, and we need the revenue to help with treatment and to continue providing cessation programs as well as prevention programs. But really, it is a huge factor in helping people quit. Studies over and over have shown that the more that you raise the tax, more people quit. Low-income people and young people in particular are very price sensitive, and it's much better to try to prevent people from starting in the first place than to put enormous energy into trying to get people to quit as adults. So it's very important. I missed the beginning of yours because I was running down here, so at risk of repeating maybe something that you said, 43.8 million Americans smoke, and studies have shown that 80% of those want to quit. They need the help to be able to do so. 42,000 people under the age of 18 are smoking. Over 4,000 Oregon youth every year start smoking. Tobacco costs Oregonians $1.2 million in healthcare costs alone, as well as the estimate is $2 billion if you include lost productivity. And just to highlight some of the challenges and show how people all around the state really care about this, Mel Cheney, who's executive director of the Community Cancer Foundation and the Community Cancer Center in Roseburg, has said tobacco use is perhaps the single most significant preventable health problem in the world. The costs to our communities are staggering. Hundreds of thousands of lives lost, money spent to treat smoking-related diseases, lost worker productivity, and damage from cigarette-induced fires every year in Oregon. Taxing an addictive and harmful product to discourage its use is a worthwhile idea. With every increase in tobacco taxes, usage has declined. Tax revenue can be directed toward health care for lung disease and cancer, as well as asthma and a variety of other things. So that brings us to the House Bill 4129, which I vigorously support. This it discourages initiation among youth, as has been said, increases cessation among current smokers, and reduces average cigarette consumption among those who continue to smoke. As tobacco prices go up, people smoke less. Smokers quit, and youth do not start. It's estimated that a 10% increase in price reduces cigarette consumption among adults by about 4% and has an even greater impact among youth and low-income smokers. Oregon's tax is currently at $1.31. 21 states have cigarette taxes that are at $2 or more per pack. 6 of those are at $3 or more per pack, including Washington State. Since New York State raised its rate to $4.35 a pack, and New York City raised its rate to $5.85 a pack, smoking has dropped significantly. One of the biggest questions has always been, how will this affect low-income people? This is a fair question, because low-income people smoke at roughly twice the rate as the general population, 31.4% as opposed to 17.7%. High-income earners are around 11%. The high cost of smoking to low-income populations, from the cost of buying cigarettes to the cost of poor health care, poor outcomes, is a barrier to their climbing out of poverty. Because low-income groups are more responsive to price increases, increasing the price of cigarettes can reduce cigarette consumption among low-income smokers by a greater percentage than among high-income smokers, thereby diminishing socioeconomic smoking disparities. I'm on the board of Northwest Health Foundation. We produced a study that showed the impact on low-income and how people think it's going to actually increase cost to them, but actually overall it decreases because of the cessation and better health care costs. Secondly, in addition to raising the price to incentivize cessation, we need to provide free cessation programs to those who can't afford them. We can't just say, sorry, price is high, you're on your own. This is why 4129 makes sense. CCOs across the state can be empowered to provide services to the Medicaid population to break this cycle. I want to also support any kind of designation to mental health, because people who have mental health tend to smoke at twice the rate of people that do not struggle with mental health and addictions. So it's very important to provide that kind of support. I would also support an amendment that would designate 10% or 15 cents a pack to the state's tobacco prevention program, which is an important partner in the CCOs to sharing best practices across the state. Currently, 4 cents of each pack goes to the state tobacco prevention funding, which is spent on cessation programs through the counties, surveillance, statewide media, statewide quit line. This is a really important piece of what we do, even though we are very underfunded at 4 cents a pack, is about 25% of CDC recommendations. It's really critical, and in fact, this tax could end up, because of reducing consumption, reducing the amount that goes to the state. So I think it's really important that we take that into effect. We do not want to undermine our state prevention, and so I fully support 15 cents a pack to increase this program, which would actually fully fund it at the CDC levels. So colleagues, we have an opportunity to significantly reduce the prevalence of the #1 preventable cause of chronic disease and death in Oregon, save millions of dollars in health care costs, not to mention productivity, every year, and lead the country in smoking cessation. I urge your support.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may add one more point,
Please.
that when Representative Kenny Geyer mentioned productivity, it did occur to me to point out one thing very clearly to this committee. We may ultimately not get very much revenue from this if it works the way it's supposed to. We will get substantially increased revenue in other ways because we will not have parents missing work because their kids have asthma exacerbations, because we will not have workers at lower productivity levels because they're struggling with chronic health conditions induced by tobacco use, because we will not be seeing people missing time from work overall, either because of their or their children's illnesses, because children will get more, we will be more likely to hit our 40-40-20 goals, because we know that absenteeism is a leading cause of failure to graduate high school on time. And we will see a decrease ultimately in our corrections costs, because the costs that we incur from inmates who smoke and also from people who end up in the criminal justice system who never should have if they'd gotten a proper education, which can be enhanced by actually having kids in school, we will be helping by decreasing smoking. So those are some other points to consider. We may not get ultimately direct revenue from this. We will get indirect revenue that I think will be very important and of a kind that we can all be much happier to get because it means Oregonians will be working. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Questions for this panel? I simply want to note that I very much appreciate all your testimony. I should note that this committee technically isn't supposed to be a healthcare committee, but the fact that this is one topic that we know pretty well because we seem to be dealing with it at least once every session, sometimes a couple of times. But I would also add that all three of you have added things in your testimony that I did not know, and I appreciate that. Representative Clem, did you have something to add?
I was just going to comment, Mr. Chair, if you would get this tax into law, we'll stop coming back every session.
Oh, I hope not. I hope. I mean, I've gotten sort of used to having these conversations, and
What about neonicotinoids down the hall?
Down
if you
the
want
hall.
to talk about some other chemicals.
right, dealing with our
Bees.
small buzzy friend.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Thank-
we're happy to continue to educate the committee, Mr. Chair, if there are other topics this committee would like to hear about that relate to revenue and health combined.
I'm in big trouble now, I can tell.
I'll
Thank you very
tell
much.
Coos Bay stories
Yeah.
if you want. They're pretty.
Well, we do have a
sensitive.
very long list today, and I'd like to try to get through it this morning. I appreciate very much the three of you coming and Representative Clem for bringing this bill.
Thank you very
Thank
much, Mr.
thank
Chair.
you. And now I have at least 13 people signed up. I don't know if there's anyone else who wants to be heard. We have 39 minutes, if I count correctly, before the end of our hearing today. I would love to get through this list, so I'm going to ask people to restrict their testimony to things that we haven't already heard, and to present their information in the shortest form possible. I'm going to set a 3-minute clock and ask you to adhere to that. And I'm just going to go down the list from the top. I probably will have difficulty pronouncing some names, so please bear with me. It looks like Tommy Devereaux, Earl, boy. Devereaux Earl, one person, sorry, yes, thank you. Please come forward. Paul Bates, David Glenn, those three. You're finding yourself here a lot these days, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm trying not to, but
Yeah.
you keep making me come back.
Please go ahead and,
Yes. I'm Tommy Devereaux. I'm here in opposition of this tax bill, and I'm not. The piece that I'm in opposition of is including e-cigarette products as a tobacco product. They are not tobacco products. They are a nicotine product. Nicotine does not kill. Nicotine is a class 2 stimulant that is not different than caffeine. Last week while we were testifying in the health services bills, there in Seattle was a international convention on tobacco and tobacco research. And from that, they brought forth several studies. I know I kind of bombarded you guys with a lot of studies to look at. Former Surgeon General Richard Pomona is now on the board of Enjoy, which is a national cigarette company. And the reason he's on that board is because he believes in the public health ability of these drugs. I believe it's medically unethical to tax a product that is doing essentially what the Surgeon General has not been able to do in its last 50 years of tobacco cessation. We have quit smoking, and it's been a grassroots movement. We, the people, developed this technology, and we keep developing it. We're not happy that Big Tobacco in the last 2 years has tried to steal the ideas that we have and leech off of it, and they're not doing it in an effective way. I would like to I'm sorry, I just in the research that was discussed in Seattle last week, there was a new study. Sorry, I'm pulling it up. I did. I submitted all of this. This is.
And we do have your written testimony. We have 3 different documents from you.
Yes.
And I will certainly ask the committee to read all of them. You've presented some very interesting arguments that I think the committee should be aware of.
So why I think it's medically unethical to tax e-cigarettes. Konstantinos Varsalinos is a leading cardiologist researcher from the Onassis Center in Greece. He's been presenting many studies on the safety of e-cigarettes. There's a study that I've listed in those groups showing the impact of vaping e-cigs as compared to 2 cigarettes on cardiovascular tissue in the aorta. There is 0 effect and 0 constriction of cardiovascular tissue from vaping an e-cigarette, as opposed to up to 30% in 2 cigarettes. I was a 20-year pack-a-day smoker.
Right.
I'm also.
And could you wrap it up, please? That would be very helpful.
Okay. There's a lot of research. Please look at what the think tanks have produced. Even last week in Seattle, I presented that information. They feel that and they also stated that it was, their conclusion was that it was medically unethical as a public health implication to tax e-cigarettes. Tennessee and Wisconsin are specifically putting in their Clean Air Act and in their tobacco policy and taxation, they're specifically excluding vapor products. And I ask that you do the same. And I'm here to be a partner and help, and I'm very passionate about this, but
Thank you.
It's changed my life and my children's life. We all know how. I was an ER nurse for 14 years. I have held people and their family members after I've watched them gasp to breathe, and they die. Probably in the hundreds. And I ask that you give me and my friend and the world the chance to breathe and to deal with the nicotine addiction and tobacco harm reduction the same as heroin and methadone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please, gentlemen.
Hi, my name is Paul Bates. Drove up from Portland this morning. Sorry, I'm a little bit, didn't know this was happening quite this now. I've come to only oppose one section of 4129, and that's the conflation of e-cigarettes with vaping with the tobacco portion. I'd just like to say it's too early for the regulation of electronic cigarettes. The industry has come so far from its infancy and it's still evolving rapidly right now. we still don't know where it's going. Innovation is coming at an extremely fast pace and may make any current regulation outdated almost before it is signed. Regulation now would be detrimental in the extreme and quite likely counterproductive even to the wishes and goals of the well-meaning policymakers behind this bill. One of the worst things to happen to e-cigarettes was calling them cigarettes, e-cigarettes. While the first devices produced were meant to mimic cigarettes, the industry is quickly outgrowing what we call cigalikes. In general, the vaping public disdains them. We hate cigarettes. Just like to make that quite clear, everybody here. We hate cigarettes. What we're going for is a true paradigm shift. Look how adamantly we refer to vaping as vaping rather than smoking. None of us say we're smoking because we're not. Trying to fit vaping into any existing legislation on the tails of tobacco regulations is like trying to saddle a zebra because it has 4 legs and a tail. Would you try to tax a new clean electric car exactly like a gasoline one?
Yeah.
Would public policy be focused on whether it had 4 wheels and got you from place to place or on its public impact? I think we would all vote for the latter option. Vaping should not be equated with cigarettes and tobacco products. We will support taxes and regulations for the vaping community, but not before the industry is out of its infancy. Look at how the internet has been allowed to grow. It brought a revolution to our way of life. It is arguably the single greatest thing to come out of social and business health and well-being in the last 50 years, and the U.S. is stronger for it. Let the U.S. lead the way in vaping or e-cigarettes as well. Let's let the free market take over, guide it as it grows, rather than stifling it before it has a chance to save so many people. I did a quick calculation. There's something like 500,000 deaths a year caused by e-cigarettes. That would be approximately 4,000 people in Oregon alone. That's approximately 12 people per day. I think e-cigarettes may help reduce those deaths up to like 90% in 10 to 15 years, but only if we let it stay an inexpensive option for those looking to switch from current use of tobacco to vaping. Look at the microbrewery revolution, one that began in large part due to the relaxation of
And
regulations.
if you could wrap up, that would be very
Couldn't make
helpful.
beer.
Thank you.
Give me a couple of minutes, please.
Well, except
Yeah.
we don't have a couple
Yeah.
of minutes.
Okay. That started here in Oregon. Vaping is very much in the same category. No one would say that alcohol is a completely safe product. By any conceivable measure, beer is much more deadly than nicotine liquid ever could be. I'm not going to mention tobacco. You know, and there's nothing that beer replaces as a harmful. It's not like beer replaces heroin or something like that. Nicotine liquid replaces one of the most preventable, deadly health issues on the planet.
Thank you very much.
Can I have 30 more seconds?
Well,
please?
I've already given you
Yeah.
an extra minute, so let's wrap it up very quickly.
Okay.
I'd like to get on, because other people would like to be heard today, and
Okay.
we'll have to cut them off if I allow people
I
to
will go
run
as
long.
fast as I possibly
Thank you.
can with one final thing. I've been vaping for almost 2 years. I've had a business dedicated to vaping products since late September of last year, a mere 5 months. In those 4 or 5 months alone, I've seen rapid progress in the quality of equipment that is being produced. I've noticed another thing that is really remarkable. When I started carrying nicotine strengths up to 24 milligrams, generally considered a 1 or 2 pack a day smokers, and no zero nicotine when I first started. The call for lower and lower nicotine strengths has truly shocked me. Most customers are constantly trying to go lower and lower on their nicotine, and they're able to do it in a way they could never do with cigarettes. Sales of 0 milligram non-nicotine juices are the fastest climbing in my store. Currently considering dropping the 24 milligram nicotine strength altogether. Of the 5 brands I carry, only 2 of them I carry up to 24 milligrams, necessary only for those heavy smokers to make the transition. Most of them drop a level or 2 within weeks or months. Another thing that we notice working in the trenches is the issue of dual use almost never comes up. Most people start vaping successfully, stop smoking, even if they never intended to when they first come in. Cigarettes become so foul and offensive that they simply can't smoke. Number of people who come back after 3, 5, 10 days, 2 months, tell me I haven't had a cigarette since I came in is simply amazing. One of the most gratifying experiences of my entire life.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And
Thank you for the extra time, Chairman.
well, you're welcome. David Glenn, please.
Hi, I'm David Glenn. I smoked for 20 years.
And if you want to say "me too," that would be acceptable. Unless you have
Yes.
something you would like to add.
It is. I'm more worried. I started a business based on the fact that I got into vaping. It got me off of cigarettes. I was a 24 milligram smoker for a long time, or a vapor. I got off of cigarettes. I'm down to 6 milligrams, and it works for me. I'm weaning myself off of the nicotine using vapor, and I wanted to share that with other people, and I've started a business that is dedicated to helping people do that. We don't sell tobacco products. We sell vaping products. And the way that the current bill is structured, where the vocabulary adds vaping into the other tobacco category, and it taxes the devices on such a level, we have fixed costs on the electronics, and I think there's a lack of understanding on what it entails. It's not just some little cigarette-looking device. It has a fixed cost to it, whereas that tax applied to those fixed costs on the products themselves would destroy the vaping industry. Chairman Bernhardt, you testified there's 87 businesses in Oregon when you were talking about the 4115 bill. 87 businesses that are dedicated to trying to get people off of cigarettes and away from that addiction. And it's working. And you amended the 4115 bill to allow for the vape shops to exist because we believe in what it does to help people get off of tobacco. This tax bill would effectively kill it. It would completely kill the Oregon businesses' ability to sustain themselves because we can't compete with the online sales. Until FDA regulation comes out, which we hope it does. We want it. We want you guys to give it a chance for that to happen, because online sales is where the Oregonians are going to go, or they're going to go across the border over into Washington and they're going to buy what they need. And all the revenue that can be generated here in Washington State from the vape shops, Oregon State, my apologies, all of that revenue that is generated is going to go out of state. It's going to go online. A $45 product that is a battery-operated object that is designed to help utilize the nicotine solution that's designed to give vapor, that is a fixed cost. And with the taxes that go on it, they would have to be passed on to the customer, which would be put well over $100. Customers aren't going to buy it there. They're going to go online and get it. We already compete with online stores, and the benefit we offer is training and advice and helping them get off of this stuff. If this bill passes with electronic cigarettes in there, you've killed the vaping industry. And right now, it's saving lives. I lost my mom to lung cancer 2 years ago. That's when my brother pushed me onto vapor. I didn't think anything was going to get me off of cigarettes. Vapor did. I haven't had a cigarette in well over a year and a half. This kills it if this bill goes through.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there questions for this panel?
I forgot to say, we represent 466 Oregon people just in our Portland Facebook group alone, 5,000 on my page, and over 600 Twitter followers. It's a social revolution in Oregon, and we believe in it. And
There are thousands of vapors escaping cigarettes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and we'll go on to our next panel now. I do appreciate your testimony. Timothy, it looks like Schultz, Paul Romaine, and Chris Gerard. Good morning. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Chairman. I'd like to go ahead and save a little bit of time and go ahead and say me too.
That'd be great.
But there's a couple of technical aspects about the
Would
bill.
you state your name for the record, please?
Timothy Schultz.
Thank you.
Couple of technical aspects that I want to go over briefly. One is the way these products are defined.
We're looking at page 7, I think.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
on page 7. Is it? Yeah, right here.
Page 6.
It says an electronic device
Yes.
to heat nicotine solutions and other solutions for the purpose of producing vapor to be inhaled by the user of the device. Some of these devices may or may not even be electronic. That description kind of describes what's been spoke of as a cigalikes. Then there's a device like this. This has electronics in it. But these devices are sold in different pieces. The only part that has electronics in this piece, which is sold differently from the tank. So the question then becomes, what gets taxed? Does it all get taxed? Does just the battery gets taxed? Then there are enthusiast devices like this, Your Honor, but again are sold in pieces. The battery, which is the only electronic component, is sold as a totally separate piece. It's used for flashlights and lots of other products. The rest of this comes with no wiring. It's called a mechanical device. It makes a physical connection on the battery with no wire, except for the heating element. The heating element doesn't even come installed on the device, and is something that's built by the enthusiast to put on it. Is that then called an electronic device, or is it not? Does it get taxed, or does it not? There's a lot of ambiguity in the bill as far as the products that I sell in my shop, where a lot of questions come up. I think in the short session, with the field moving so quickly, it would be really hard to get an accurate definition of vaping products.
Thank you. And did you have a different point then in addition? You said a couple of technical issues.
Well, no, that is my technical. I don't have a definition to submit at this point.
Thank you. I don't mean to. I am very aware, and I think the committee is, that definitions are an issue in this area. Gentlemen, please.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Paul Romaine. I'm with the Romaine Group with my daughter Danelle, and we're here representing VMR Products, which is a company that produces and distributes and designs a whole catalog of electronic cigarette products. It's unfortunate that they're called electronic cigarettes because, as stated before, there's no tobacco in these things, and I think that's part of the problem here. We tend to try and treat them like tobacco when they're not. We have a varying line of products that have declining nicotine content. There are ways to get people off of traditional cigarettes. This is something, it's a new area that the legislature is stepping into way prematurely. What you need to do, we support bans on kids getting access to this stuff. Believe me, we don't want the kids to get it. But it's a way that you can transition existing smokers to something that does not harm anybody else out there. It's a product that needs to be encouraged at this point, not regulated to death. And frankly, this tax that you have in this bill will regulate it to death. It's something that you may take up next session when you have a little more time to talk about this, to think about it, but it's not something you should do right now. We also represent, my daughter and I, the Oregon Petroleum Association. We have a number of convenience stores that will transition into Mr. Gerard's testimony, although he disowns me half the time, so it's okay. Thank you. I'm finished. I respect the time, and I yield the rest of my time to anybody else.
Thank you. Mr. Gerard, please.
Good morning, Chair Barnhart, Vice Chairs Bailey and Berger, committee members. I'm Chris Gerard, CEO of Plant Pantry, and the chairman of ONSA, the Oregon Neighborhood Store Association. Plaid owns and operates 108 convenience stores in the Northwest, with the majority of the stores being here in Oregon. We've been locally owned and operated for over 50 years. We employ 700 Oregonians. We provide our employees a full benefit package, including affordable health insurance. ONSA provides legislative and regulatory representation for Oregon's 2,900 smaller, mostly family-owned and operated convenience stores. Mr. Chair, if I had to pick one word to describe this bill, the word would be devastating. This huge tax increase is devastating for small businesses. It's devastating for all retail workers' jobs, pay, and benefits. It's devastating for a minority of consumers. And in the end, it's devastating to a critical revenue stream for the state.
How does this compare?
Cigarette taxes, other tobacco products, and master settlement agreement payments total $334 million annually. To put this in perspective, this is 50% more than the total annual liquor revenue distributions from OLCC. But tobacco is a declining and fragile revenue stream that calls for delicate management. This bill is a legislative and fiscal step. 20 years ago, Oregon collected taxes on nearly twice the number of cigarettes as today. But aside from this underlying ongoing decrease in units available for taxing, more than doubling the current tax will severely damage this revenue source and will not produce near the incremental revenue you might expect. The relatively small incremental revenue it may produce would be more than offset by economic damage that would largely need to be replaced by additional state funding, new unemployment payments, additional supplemental nutrition assistance, and health benefits that were formerly paid by employers. Also, more than doubling taxes on a small group of citizens to benefit the overall population is not fair. And higher tobacco taxes do not significantly reduce consumption, but they drive consumers to avoid and evade taxes. There are two major components that should be considered. We're currently collecting over $62 million annually from Washington tobacco users. Most of this would go away literally overnight with this tax increase. 40 million packs would disappear. In addition, we will lose another 28 million packs because the influx of additional non-tax product to fill the demand created by such a large price gap. So not only will we not collect $1.50 on these 68 million lost units, but we'll lose the current $1.31 per pack. This proposed tax might raise a relatively modest $50 million, but this would be more than offset by $100 million in real payments to employees, hours worked, fewer jobs, less employer-paid benefits, including health insurance, and less revenue paid to Oregon small businesses. The math is in my written testimony.
Yep, and we appreciate the detail that you've gone into there.
In summary, this proposed tax is unfair. It hurts legitimate small businesses. It rewards and encourages illegal enterprises and unlawful activity. We're at the point where increasing the tax rate does not net new revenue to the state, considering these other liabilities created. And we're proposing to create new programs that funding demands are not going to be met by taxing tobacco alone. If taxes are increased, I think all citizens should be asked to sacrifice proportionally. We oppose this bill.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Questions for this panel? Representative Bentz, please.
Just one, thank you. Can any one of you share with me the speed at which the transition is occurring from cigarettes to e-cigarettes?
Again, we're relatively new. This is Paul Romaine speaking for the record. We're relatively new to this representation, but one of the statistics that we were given is one industry analyst recently predicted that e-cigarettes will surpass conventional tobacco cigarettes by 2017.
Follow up.
Yes, please.
And the question then, of course, is if we were going to assume that taxing e-cigarettes would replace taxing real cigarettes, how far off would we be by virtue of the quantity of e-cigarettes consumed?
Well, Mr. Chair, Representative Bentz, if you start taxing e-cigarettes, you're going to push that date back much further. What happens now is you have access to something that people can get to, and it's a lot cheaper. If you start taxing e-cigarettes, you're going to push that, you're going to raise the price, and you're going to push people away from it. Right. That's not what you want to do.
Okay. Mr. Chair,
please.
My question was, what if we did switch over, and assuming consumption transition continued to occur, we get a tax on every pack of cigarettes. I'm guessing, that's why I'm asking, is you have to go buy an e-cigarette the same amount of times you got to buy a pack? My guess is you don't, but that's why I'm asking.
Mr. Chair, I'm absolutely incapable of answering that question because I'm not a smoker.
Yep, please.
You want me to...
No, we have people here who are going to answer the question.
The most popular disposable unit that we sell, one is approximately equivalent to 2 packs of cigarettes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Representative Bentz, actually, in my experience, since as a user of the products, they're not really equivalent to 2 packs of cigarettes. But they're not, you don't buy a new device each time in most of the ones that people are successful in transitioning for. You buy fluids, you buy coils, and putting they're used at a different rate. To actually say it's going to replace revenue at the same rate or not, it's hard to estimate without any accurate predictions at this point. It's too early to tell.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
That's very helpful. Other questions? Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate your testimony very much. Brian Barry, Jason Williams, please. And then I I have two more panels after that of two people, so if you can be very brief, that would be helpful. Yes, please.
I can be brief. Good morning, Chairman Barnhart, Vice Chair Bailey, Vice Chair Berger, committee members. My name is Brian Berry. I'm the president of Core-Mark, Portland Division. Core-Mark is a national broad-based distributor of services and supplies to the convenient retail industry. We employ 300 Oregonians, and last year we paid $87 million, or 34% of the tax collected on tobacco, cigars, and cigarettes. I am a responsible licensed distributor. I opposed House Bill 4129, which increases the cigarette tax by 215% and the tobacco tax by over 25%. I have 2 points to make. I'll make them briefly. Rather than repeat what was said earlier, the difference right now between Oregon and Washington is $17. The flow of income is coming this way. It's worth about $62 million. That will go away if this bill passes, because the rate will be so minute that there will be no incentive to do that. The other point I want to make is that, on this particular point, is that chewing tobacco, the part that drives the tobacco business, which is Copenhagen, Skoal, Kodiak, etc., our rate per unit, if this bill passes, would go from $1.78 per unit to $2.68, which would place us higher than the state of Washington, which is currently at $2.53, Idaho at $1.12, Nevada at 84 cents, and California at 83 cents. You cannot stamp this product. You cannot keep track of it. We will not sell any. It will be inbound from other states. Higher tobacco taxes don't stop use. They just move it to other areas to purchase. And what's going to happen once we have a rate of $28.10, if this bill passes, is that we will begin to see a lot more of what is called casual and commercial smuggling. The higher the tax rate, the larger the smuggling rate. Casual smuggling is what we see in Vancouver when they come over to Oregon and buy personal product for personal use without the intent to resale. That's looked upon as almost socially acceptable because there doesn't seem to be any profiteering on it. Commercial is a different matter altogether. That's when the excise tax becomes so substantial between neighboring states that it becomes more prevalent and the economic benefit exceeds the associated risk. Then you begin to involve organized crime, and it's real and it does happen. Yes, tobacco taxes in states did drive down New York, but it didn't drive down smuggling. New York, state of New York has a 61% smuggling rate. The state of Washington, by their own accord, has a 48.5% smuggling rate. Wisconsin has a 36.4% smuggling rate. Oregon, right now, has a 15% smuggling rate. That will go up probably in between Washington and Wisconsin and be about 40%. I don't think that's unreasonable to guess that. With the difference between Idaho being a tax rate of $5.70 and Oregon's proposed $28.10, that leaves a gap of $22.40. If an enterprising criminal, and there are such people, decided to rent a small truck or van, a commercial van, they could fit 200 cases in that. They could bring it across the border. That would carry 6,000 cartons. If they sold that at half the tax rate, they would make $67,200. If an organized criminal organization got involved, now you're looking at 53-foot tractor trailers walking up and down. You know the ones that you see up and down I-5 all day long? To rent one of those for a week is $700. To fill it full of diesel is $200, especially if it's a one-way trip. You can fit 1,900 cases of cigarettes. That's 57,000 cases in a 53-foot trailer. Now the profit goes to $638,000. Sound unreasonable? Not at all. It's happening all over the place in the Midwest and in the northeastern states. And I'll close by saying I strongly oppose House Bill 4129. The bill's sizable increase in cigarettes and tobacco taxation will adversely affect revenue streams in the long term while creating boundless potentials for encouraging criminal profiteering. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Chair, members of the committee, my name is Jason Williams, State Director of the Taxpayer Association of Oregon. I will try to keep this to 60 seconds. I submitted some testimony. There's some great media articles this year. Ben Bolton talks about Oregon being a lower cigarette use state, and also about the misuse of funds, how even as small as 3% of the funds actually goes to the cessation programs. I think that that's just horrible. I think that we could do a lot to help by using more of the funds for what they need to be used for. And if it's, and also the Statesman Journal article talking about how, increasing it sometimes does not affect the actual smoking levels. So that's some local articles taking a local picture at it. With the teen smoking being as low as 10 to 11%, I just think it's bad that we punish 100% of the adults for the actions of 10% of the teens. There's got to be a better way. And my testimony at the bottom just shows you a lot of different things about how when we raise the taxes, the revenue disappears, so we're not getting the effects that we need. So please look over my testimony, and because I think that seeing some of these recent media articles shows that the media is kind of beginning to shine a light that, hey, everyone's been jumping on this bandwagon, but now I think the bandwagon has fallen apart because they're taxing too much and they're not using the funds properly.
Thank you very much. Questions for this panel? Gentlemen, thank you. We appreciate your testimony. Adele Adams, Katie King, Josh, boy, I'm going to mess this one up, Valak, and Caleb Hayes. Please, ladies.
Good morning, Chair Barnhart, Vice Chairs Bailey and Berger, and members of the committee. My name is Adele Adams, and I'm here today representing Multnomah County. I work in the Tobacco Prevention and Education section of the County Health Department. I'm going to try and speed this up by not repeating what we've heard today. So the tobacco tax increase of $1.50 is certainly a public health win, as making tobacco more expensive is a public health best practice to reduce youth initiation and use and to help people quit. The recent Surgeon General's report, The Health Consequences of Smoking, 50 Years of Progress, clearly states that the evidence is sufficient to conclude that increasing the prices of tobacco products, including those resulting from excise tax increases, prevent initiation of tobacco use, promote cessation, and reduce the prevalence and intensity of tobacco use among youth and young adults. In this particular report, there were key conclusions providing evidence that calls for dramatic action to be taken instantly. It states that the endgame strategies are currently being developed, and so 7 actions should be implemented immediately. I'm going to highlight 2 of those for now. There's 8. The 7 are included in the testimony that I provided with you. The first one being raising the average excise cigarette tax to prevent youth from starting smoking and encouraging current smokers to quit. The second one is fully funding comprehensive statewide tobacco control programs at CDC recommended funded levels. The report also explains that the evidence-based tobacco control interventions that are effective continue to be underutilized and implemented at far below recommended CDC funding levels. Implementing tobacco control policies and programs as recommended by the United States Health and Human Services and the Institute of Medicine on a sustained basis at high intensity would accelerate the decline of tobacco use in youth and young adults and also accelerate the progress toward the goal of ending the tobacco epidemic. Multnomah County is one of the 34 local health departments charged with protecting the public's health and preventing the spread of chronic diseases in local communities throughout Oregon. Sadly, tobacco use remains a leading cause of preventable death in Oregon. In Multnomah County alone, over 220...
Of course, you're aware that we have your testimony.
Yes.
Right.
So just highlighting the cost of, in just Multnomah County alone, I know it was touched on slightly earlier, but just for Multnomah County, $223 million is spent each year on medical-related costs. And then another $195 million in productivity is lost due to tobacco-related illness and early death. So please remember that nearly 90% of smokers start before the age of 18, and nearly no one starts smoking at the age of 25. So it's imperative that we implement strategies that prevent youth from smoking and help people quit. Dedicating a portion of House Bill 4129, a $1.50 tax, to tobacco prevention education programs will help to fund interventions that will do just that.
Thank you.
Chair Barnhart and members of the committee, my name's Katie King, and I'm here today representing the Coalition of Local Health Officials. And the coalition includes all 34 local health departments. And I would like to say me too, and the coalition supports this bill along with amendments that would dedicate a percentage of the tax increase revenues to local public health prevention programs. And that will help promote some broader collaboration to to do the prevention work with CCOs. So thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions for this panel? Thank you. I will simply note that you and the Taxpayers Association agree on that one point, and that's useful to know. Please.
Good morning, Chair Barnhart, members of the committee. My name is Caleb Hayes. I'm here on behalf of the National Association of Social Workers and their 1,800 members here in Oregon. First, I'm going to tell you why I'm here. Second, I'm going to do a couple Me Too's, and then I'm going to reiterate one more point. We'll make it quick. I'm here because, as defined in our Code of Ethics, the primary mission of a social worker is to enhance human well-being and ensure that the basic human needs are provided to every member of our community, with specific emphasis on those who are vulnerable, oppressed, and living in poverty. I'd like to echo the statements of Representative Kenny Geyer, Representative Klim, and Senator Steiner Hayward. They did an excellent job. I hate testifying after them because they take all my good points, but I'm going to reiterate one more. Many smokers are in poverty. One might make the argument that taxing something they are addicted to would hurt those in poverty, but this simply isn't the case. This tax goes toward preventative care and mental health, subsequently to programs that help people quit smoking and lift families out of poverty. I urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Barnhart, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Josh Ballack, representing the Coalition for a Healthy Oregon. These are 8 organizations who work with our 8 coordinated care organizations across the state. First off, Coalition for a Healthy Oregon just supports this policy in order to help people quit smoking. Believe that that's the most appropriate way. Raising the actual cost will result in people reducing to start smoking. But also, we were very pleased to see that this would be dedicated to help pay for preventative and primary care. There are some really innovative programs that are starting to pop up around the state through the CCOs. I think one in Chair Barnhart's backyard down at Bethel School District, where their Trillium Health Plan is helping train teachers to teach what's known as the good behavior game, which is a in the grade schools. Basically, it's just a program to teach kids how to do, think about consequences. And they've seen through other studies that when kids go through this good behavior game, they reduce their likelihood of using drugs or starting smoking by 50 to 90%. And so the CCO has actually gone out and partnered up with the schools and now is starting to spread to other schools. These are the type of innovative programs that this type of funding increase could actually put on steroids and be able to spread across our state. All the evidence shows that one of the best ways to help reduce smoking and get people to quit is through the patient-provider relationship. By giving more funds to the CCOs to help encourage that, you're going to end up seeing an overall reduction. So with that, we really appreciate you guys taking the time to hear this bill, and we urge passage of this bill.
Thank you very much. Questions for this panel? I'll simply note that good behavior idea that you're talking about does a whole lot more than deal with just drug addiction. It reduces high school and middle school fights and produces adults who are less likely to commit crimes as they're older. So people who learn how to deal with disputes and disagreements in a socially proactive way generally work better as adults.
The good behavior game has become so popular that literally teachers are flocking to it, saying, "Hey, us too, please do it." So I think there's proofs in the pudding. So
thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate it. We've completed our list for this bill, and so we'll close the public hearing on House Bill 4129. Colleagues, you finished.